That is good for the blood pressure. Uh, we've been wanting to go to museums for a very long time. And there's only one place to start, and that'll be in Franschhoek. And the man on the screen there, Wayne Harley, a warm evening to you and a warm welcome.
Hey, Patrick, how's it going?
No, great to have you on air with us. We're going to try something new tonight. It's going to keep you busy more than it's going to keep us busy, because we want you to walk through 4 halls of very, very desirable vehicles and give us a background as to what this is all about. Unfortunately, Clint is so young on the other side, he wouldn't recognize half the cars there. But you can try and educate him tonight. Good evening to you as well, Clint.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Clint. How are you?
Yes, I just had to change my data supply because I'm a good man. Good, Wayne. Good chatting to you again. I'm actually sitting in a dark room. I have my studio lights on, so you don't see the effects of darkness. And I'm looking forward to tonight's show. Let's talk about cars and interesting cars because I think there's quite a collection located inside of the Western Cape that I think it's generated a lot of international interest also.
Yeah, and what's lovely about it is I think a lot of people now with lockdown not being able to go anywhere are discovering museums and places they've never been before because they're bored and they can't travel. And now they've got to try something new. So this is what's great about museums. We're getting faces that have never been here before.
Well, this is a feel-good program as far as I'm concerned, because everything behind you is older than I am. So, Wayne, this didn't start in the Cape. You actually, this museum started in Heidelberg.
Yeah, it started actually, Patrick, it actually started way back. It started back in 1974. But you know what? I've just finished doing a piece now. It actually goes back a lot further than a person realizes. I'm going to just stand. You can see this behind me on the screen. It starts actually with the Rupert family and their involvement with. How do I get this idiot out of the way? There we go. There's Mr. Rupert.
There we go. We got the screen.
Okay. So it actually starts with the family. The family's got a very proud. How can I say, association with Afrikaner. And when I say Afrikaner, I'm talking about anything to do with Southern Africa. The heritage, the arts, music. They are great patrons of South Africa. And one of the things that they did is they restored the old Zasem station in Heidelberg, and it was done in the 1970s and actually opened in 74 to the public. And they put a transport museum in it. That's the building there in the background now. And it was great because it brought back something to the town that they'd how can I put it? They didn't just take from a town; they gave back to the town of Heidelberg. And so, when Heidelberg's Motor Museum was forced to close due to pressure from tobacco lobbyists, the Rupert family moved it to their private farm, in Franschhoek. And they've, instead of just hoarding it and keeping it away, they actually opened it up again to the public and have made it accessible to the whole nation of South Africa. And, for a small fee, I mean, it's not cheap to run this place, you can actually come visit and enjoy some of the greatest cars in the collection. I mean, we have some remarkable cars in this museum. I want to turn this around, just, show you around. I mean, very few people know that the Franschhoek Motor Museum actually owns the very first Ford ever to come to South Africa. This car was brought into South Africa by a gentleman by the name of Arthur Hilden. Brought the car back in 1903. And believe it or not, he actually bought this car from Henry Ford himself. He bought it in New York, had it shipped to South Africa, and it arrived about a year later, in 1904. The motoring journalist, the motoring historian Bob Johnson, actually said that he thinks this is the first Ford ever to leave the North American continent. So, Africa, and especially Southern Africa, was a very wealthy country. And, we had a lot of great industrialists here, especially during the ostrich feather boom of the early 1900s. And if you go like to Oudtshoorn, for example, you go to the C.P. Nel Museum, you'll see one of the first Panhards ever to arrive in this country is there, unrestored, as original as the day it was found. And it just goes back to show that, when the world started motoring, Southern Africa started motoring. And along with all that, we have this great, great heritage of motoring in South Africa, which has led to, where we are today. We enjoy motoring, we enjoy motorsport, and we have great pieces here, absolutely amazing pieces.
Wayne, I'm afraid we're not going to say much then, because that was the first car you touched on tonight, and I'm hooked. Carry on, please. I want to know more.
No, I mean, I don't want to turn this into a boring long tour, but I think what I want to do is I actually want to encourage people to, actually come see this for themselves. To do it virtually is great, and to share it with all South Africans is fantastic. And I know not many people can travel this distance, but to highlight every car and to go through every car tonight is going to take us about 4 hours. But the other thing is, you've got to come and experience this firsthand, because motoring is not just about looking at stuff. It's about smelling it. It's about actually seeing the scale. These cars, they are monsters in some regards. And then in other regards, they're really, really tiny. So I think as I walk, I'm going to just quickly try and see if I can't get as many cars. So this car behind me, this little red Zebra, was the old Franschhoek, listen to me, the old Heidelberg Transport Museum's. This is so difficult, guys. How do I focus on that?
You're doing well. You're doing well.
The little red car behind me.
We see it.
That car there is actually the Zebra. It's a 1909 Zebra. It's a single cylinder, 600cc, total loss. A little 3-speed transmission. And that car was actually, the logo for the old Heidelberg Transport Museum. This car was brought to South Africa back in the early 70s when the Ruperts.
Yeah, I think okay, wait.
So they actually bought this car from the Chapman collection and brought it into Southern Africa, and that's how it became the logo of the old Heidelberg Transport Museum. And it's been with. I've seen that car every day of my life now for the last 22 years. And it's one of my favorites to drive around in. And it's hard to explain, but that is pure motoring. It's really, really basic. It's got all the things that we use today. It's got the brakes, it's got a clutch, it's got gears, it's got a piston engine. But yet, so much more has happened in the motoring industry since then.
Wayne, I'm going to interrupt you, because behind you have the snakes and ladders car, as I refer to it. A very unusual vehicle in the corner there. I would love you to touch on that.
Okay,
and
so
the reason,
the
reason why I want to move in this direction, you said the feel, the smell, the atmosphere of it. And the reason why we touched on this subject tonight is you guys do a unique event on Father's Day. I know the pandemic and everything has been a real pain lately, but you have a unique event on Father's Day where you actually have many of these cars drive around your courtyard. You can hear it, you can experience these cars in action. It's a unique privilege to see these cars drive. In other words, it's not just a static display. And I trust that there will be enough freedom this year to do something similar again.
Okay, so Patrick, this year with Father's Day is going to be a little bit of a problem, purely because of our number limitations. We are not allowed to have more than 500 people a day. We're back on again. Load shedding.
Okay.
Luckily, we've got a generator. So we're gonna have very limited numbers, and then obviously the problem is with food preparation, that type of thing. We can't even offer the people catered lunches and stuff. We can only do small takeaways. So what we're doing this year with Father's Day is we will run displays. We will have all the bonnets open so people can see the engines, and that's pretty much it. Because we are limited. So it's going to be first come, first serve in terms of tickets. And, come hear them run, see them run, smell them run. And if you are early enough to get your tickets, all the tickets will be online because we have to have everybody obviously do all the COVID screening and all that ahead of time. But so yeah, the tickets. I think they are live at the moment. You can basically book it now and reserve your time slot for Father's Day.
Well, don't
When is
disappear. You're
Father's
moving
Day?
past 20th. But you're moving past the Snakes and Ladders car and you haven't spoken about it yet.
Well, you've been interrupting me the whole time with Father's Day.
Well, we've got all evening,
Yeah,
so carry
but when
on.
is Father's Day? What's the date?
Have you got children? I think it's the 20th, isn't it? Sunday the 20th.
20th, yeah. Sunday the 20th is correct.
Okay, so this is the Snakes and Ladders car, right? Oops, let me see. This is a bit difficult. Okay, so the Snakes and Ladders car, as Patrick calls, is actually a Lorraine de Dietrich. Now, Lorraine de Dietrich was a merging of two companies. The de Dietrich motor company was basically doing rather well, and then it started producing. Well, actually, what it did is it bought out Ariel and Esotta Fraschini in the early years, and this 1911 example is identifiable from a normal de Dietrich by the cross of Lorraine. Any of those who've seen any artwork of Joan of Arc would realize she also carried the cross of Lorraine into battle with her. This car comes from the Free State, was part of the Gravenstein collection. We bought this from Waldo Gravenstein's daughter, Constance. And this car at one point in time was actually burgundy. And then Waldo Gravenstein painted it to this green or we say almost khaki color. It was brought into Southern Africa by the Newbury family, who were cattle barons in the Clocolan area. And it's been with us. It's got a humongous, I don't know if you can see, I'm trying to open this. It's got a really big 5-liter 4-cylinder. There we go. Is that clear? I don't know if you can see that.
Just drop the camera a little bit. There we go. Now it's full screen.
Okay, so there we go. So that's total loss, 4-cylinder, 5-liter, and this 5-liter motor you have to crank start. So it's quite a mission. You have to really have your mealy pop in the morning to fire this thing up.
And performance, just talk a little bit about performance. Just put it in perspective. This is 1911. What performance did you get out of an engine in that era?
So this would have been roughly, so it's about 5.5. Actually, it's 5.7 liters. You're looking at about 31 kilowatts. Look, obviously, with a motor with this length of stroke, if you think about it, your piston basically travels from there to about here. So that's the length of your stroke. So it's definitely under square motor. So it's a long stroke. You've got an amazing set of torque. So this thing will be idling at about 1,000 RPM, and at top speed, you're not going to be doing more than about 3,500 RPM. And you'll comfortably cruise along at anything 45 mile an hour top speed quite comfortably. The problem with these things is, remember, what people don't understand about these cars is in 1911 in Southern Africa, 99% of what you were driving on was gravel. So you never really had the opportunity of actually opening this thing up and experiencing wind in your hair. You would have been sharing 2-lane tracks on gravel with donkey carts, bicycles. There would have been tons of game running around. So if you went from here, for example, to Worcester, or if you went from here to Kimberley, the chances are you would bump into herds of springbok, horseshoes lying in the path, that type of stuff. It's not like today. People forget that. When you look at these historic cars, You would have been on a dirt track. You would have to stop and open a farm gate. You would have had to carry all your fuel with you. You would have had to take a tent, a stove, and been prepared to sleep next to the road. I mean, people don't realize a trip from Joburg to Cape Town in one of these cars was a 2-week journey. And you took 99% of the stuff with you. So it's not like what top speed could you get in this. It was just getting there was the mission in itself.
Well, it's actually quite brilliant to listen to what you have to say about this. The aspect that it's also interesting, CPMCC, the Cape Peninsula Motorcycle and Car Club, is the second oldest club in South Africa, 1910. And I remember them actually telling us that they invested in a rather large magnet just to clear the road so that these cars could pass, because there were so many obstacles on these gravel roads. So it fits in quite nicely with what you just said. It was a challenge just getting from point A to B.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and you look at the history of automotive in South Africa, there was a point that blacksmiths started fixing cars, and because if you were traveling a long distance and you broke down and you needed to have your car repaired, the only person who had an inkling of what was meant to be done would have been a blacksmith. So you would have gone into a blacksmith and said, listen, I've broken this, can you fix this? Or I've got a flat tire, have you got tools to help me change the flat tire? It wasn't like today you found a Midas or a Speedy or whatever and you said, help me fix my car. This was pioneer motoring at its worst. It was tough. I mean, these were guys with really big hearts, who were traveling around the world. I mean, today it's like, I can do 300 kilometers an hour in my Porsche. Yeah, you're doing it down a tar road, dude. I mean, do 50 mile an hour where if you break down, you're getting eaten by a lion. The chances are that you're going to have to share your bed with that night with snakes and scorpions just because you want to go from here to Joburg. I mean, this was really, really tough motoring. People forget that.
And most of what we see in the background is open top as well. There's no windows, there's no security in these vehicles, not from the weather, not from nature, not from anything.
Okay, so let me just quickly clarify that as well. So, for example, let's go back to the Model T. I want to go back to the Model T because a lot of people don't realize not all cars. There was over 50 different body styles with Model Ts. Okay. Now this one behind me is what they call an open tourer or a runabout. You got them in 2-door coupes, you got them in 4-door town cars, you got them in buses, you got them in depot hex. So they were closed cars. There were definitely closed cars in that period. But what's interesting, the collector, believe it or not, the collectors as we know them today, always tended towards the sportier, rarer body styles. So people didn't keep the old hardtop Model Ts. They kept all the Phaetons, they kept all the Roadsters, all the Speedsters. So that's why it's the tendency to find a lot of coupes around, a lot of rag tops and Roadsters. It's because they were rarer. And remember, people have not been collecting cars since the beginning of the 1990s. I mean, Waldy Gravenstein, the Gravenstein family started collecting cars back in the 50s. So, it's strange, but the rarer body styles, the cars that were designed by great names like Park Ward, Barker, Cowley, Vanden Plas, they are the names that survived. No one collected the old standard sedans, and that's the sad part about it, because the bread and butter cars, they're missing. They're not around anymore, or they've been rebodied to something else. A lot of the sedan Bentleys have all been turned into Derby Bentleys or into Lamar Bentleys because people didn't like the bodies. So they bought a nice old Bentley and chucked the body away. And that's the sad part about motoring history. And that's where museums are very, very important. To try and save the original stuff.
Wait, as you're standing there now, what I see in the background, there's two questions that develop immediately. If you look at to your left as you're standing now, you look at the tire size on that vehicle and you compare it to the Model T. and you compare the rims and just the way the one's got spokes, the other one's got, also spokes, but big, large wooden rims.
Yeah.
The development of tire or of the rims and wheels also played an enormous role here.
Yeah. So basically, the wooden rimmed wheel. So this 1911 Model T is on wooden spoked wheels, which was an entry level wheel, but yet the 1911 Lorraine de Dietrich is on spokes. So if you had a bit of extra tom, now remember Model Ts, you could get them with so many specs. You can get them with detachable wheels. You can get them with wire wheels. You could get them with a horn. You could get them with, later on you could choose the option of electric lights. There were so many add-ons to a Model T. That's what made them so phenomenal. The first car to be produced on a production line, it changed the world as we know the car today. But it was all about how much money you were prepared to spend. And people don't realize that the add-on or the extra has been around for a lot longer than people realize. So you could buy and spec your car almost from the beginning. Rolls-Royce, for example, you could buy a rolling chassis and take it to any carrozzeria you wanted to, or any bodybuilder, and order it as you wanted to. And you could have everything done to it. You could choose the leather interior. You could choose the type of wheel you wanted on it, how many horns you wanted on it. It was amazing. I mean, it was how big as today, how deep are your pockets, and what you want to spend on your motor car.
The general Model T of the line was, how true was the statement of you could have it any color as long as it's black?
Yeah, again, that's also a story that's come a long way. If you go look at the history, the first Model Ts off the line weren't even black. That happened as production got faster and faster. They discovered black dried the quickest, and they were encouraging people to buy black ones because they could produce them faster. They produced in excess of 15 million Model Ts in the 21 years that they were building them, and I'm speaking under correction. I think it was by 1910, 1911, they had only produced 1 million. So the rest all happened very, very quickly as production was streamlined. And towards the end, there was a Model T coming off the line every 15 or 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And they were selling them at half the price by the middle of their production what they used to produce them in the beginning. That's how quick and how easy it became. And that's what Henry Ford wanted. He wanted a car that everyone could drive.
The era of development also takes us to the modern era now, where we're currently sitting with load shedding. If you look at those cars behind you, producing electricity on those vehicles for lights and all kinds of gadgets, also played a real role in progress also shows in that. Because how did you produce lights on a Model T?
So what happened was, remember, you mustn't underestimate how smart the guys were when they were producing cars. So Model Ts, initially, it was difficult because battery life was always an issue. And to get spark on those cars, they would have used things like tremolo coils or magnetos. And there was just not enough to generate power for the lights. So if you think about it, Ferdinand Porsche's first car that he would produce was four-wheel drive, electrical. Rolls-Royce's car initially was going to be an electric car. But it was always the batteries that were the issue. And electric motors were around almost from the beginning of the petrol engines. There was electrical motors. But it was always the cells, the power cells that was the issue. And that's why they went for magnetos, because they couldn't carry these big batteries around with them. And it was just a lot more simpler to put a magneto on the car. And so that's how power was generated. But as soon as they could put dynamos on the cars, when they discovered that they could put what they call a dynamo, or what do they call it now? I can't say alternator, it's not alternator, a generator. When they could put generators on the cars, then we find that they start putting in batteries. And then you had a power cell, and obviously everyone remembers the old 6-volt cars. I mean, I grew up remembering 6-volt cars. And then the globes came along. I mean, Edison and the globe was out right from the beginning. And so they put headlights on cars, and with that, there was no limits. It wasn't long after headlights, you found that the cars had horns, electric horns. Wasn't long after that, you found that the car started having electrical gadgets on it, like, for example, electric roofs. Radios came on board. I mean, there's onboard radios already in the late 40s, early 50s with cars. You know, it's amazing. You know, I've got Cadillacs here and Fords built in the 1950s with electric foldable roofs. And so it's hard to believe, but it was very, very quick that the modernization of the car happened. I mean, if you look at a car built in the 1950s to the end of the 1980s, nothing really changed much other than performance and luxury on the cars. It was from, I'd say, the middle of the 90s to where we are now that the digital age came about with computer management, all the ABSs, onboard computers, you know, electric seats, I mean, you know, cruise control, lane assist. That's where all the things. I mean, if anything's happened in the last 15 years, we've made the cars really, really safe. And may I dare say it, we've made them boring.
I couldn't agree more. But there's another element. You've got big pumps in the background there. The fuel that actually kept these guys on the road. Obviously, in the beginning, South Africa didn't have many fuel stations. It had hardly any cars. So how did these guys actually drive around?
Okay, so if you think about it, some of the first cars sold in Cape Town were actually sold from Garlics, the furniture building, so the furniture merchants. So you went and bought a dining room suite that day. In fact, if Daddy wanted a car, he bought himself a car. And the same with fuel. Your motor spirit you bought in cans from a general dealer. So you went and you bought yourself a tin of petrol from a hardware store or from a general dealer. But like with everything, it didn't take long, and we had gas pumps. And strange enough, I'm just see if I can find one we can show you. Gas was sold in gallons, and so this is a Saturn pump. If you notice, there is 2 gallons, 1 gallon bulbs at the top there. So you would fill a gallon bulb, and you'd fill a gallon bulb, and you would pay per gallon. So if your tank was full and you had a 3/4 or half gallon left over, that was your petrol. So what you would do is you'd find a lot on the older cars. Sorry, I'm going to show you something. On a lot of the older cars, you would find, you see on the step there is a Castrol can. So that is where you put your remainder petrol in. So if you had filled up with your gallons and you had a 3/4 gallon left over, you would decant it into that and take it with you. So yes, there was fuel pumps, and the fuel pumps were pretty much, by the 1920s, we had fuel pumps almost around every town.
Put it in perspective first with the modern era of economical vehicles. What range would you have on an average car in those days?
Okay, but remember now, Patrick, like I said earlier, these cars would have carried, I'm going to try and put in liters now. These cars would carry just short of I'd say about 70 liters of fuel with them. Amazing torque, low revving, okay? Dirt roads, you couldn't go fast. You were ticking along at about, I would say, 2,000, 3,000 RPM maximum, doing between 25, maybe 30 mile an hour if you had a bit of open road. That's before we had roads. So you were getting good consumption. Remember, these guys weren't burning it up like we do today. No one was going 120 k's an hour. But yeah, you would be getting anything from about 5 to 7 k's a liter on some of these old things. And we're talking now 4.5 liters, 4 cylinders on carburetors. And it's difficult because today's fuel on these cars is not the best that you can use. And they are older engines. They do burn a bit of oil. So to get true economy on this, I suppose you're going to have to go back and read some of the older scripts. But I would say anything between 5 and 8 kilometers to a liter. I think that's being very, very optimistic on some of the big ones, but yeah. Today they are. Today they are. Sorry.
Are you getting me rather confused here because with all the turning around? But I did see a car in the background that caught my eye again, a light blue. I call it the Godfather Car. It looks like one of these mafia cars, which I think is a rather unique. There we go, right behind you now. That is beautiful.
Okay, so so that's an Auburn. Okay, so this Auburn is an 852 supercharged Auburn. Now Auburn, Cord, and Duesenberg. So that's a Cord over there, the red car. So they all came out of the same factory, and they were basically premier cars of the 1930s. But unfortunately, what happened when they released these cars is they were exceptionally expensive, focused at the top end of the American market. But everyone remembers from about 1934, 35, 36, the United States, or actually the whole world, was just about to enter the Great Depression. And it was not the most ideal time to release these cars. And most of them were almost twice the price of a Cadillac. And so it kind of led to the disappearance of some of the greatest cars in the world. I mean, the Duesenberg is still regarded as one of the greatest American cars. I mean, that saying, that's a doozy, that comes from driving a Duesenberg. And I mean, until you've seen a Duesenberg in real life, I saw one in the United States, exquisitely restored. It is just a phenomenal motor car, and that's designed by the great Gordon Burek. And Gordon Burek was just one of the great designers. I mean, this is one of his creations over here. This is obviously the 810 Cord. This is a normally aspirated one, not supercharged. Sadly, it got a bit of a horrible nickname. It's nicknamed the coffin bonnet Cord because of its strange bonnet design. But other than that, it's just one of the most remarkable designs of the 1930s. One of the first cars, or actually the first car on record to actually be built in this era without running boards, which is quite remarkable. And then the fact it's got no headlights and that beautifully Art Deco designed wraparound grille, which was initially, when Burek designed this car, he wanted to create a car that had no noticeable radiator on the front, and which led to that. The headlights pop up mechanically. This car is, let me actually walk inside. This car is actually quite phenomenal to look at. It's got a 3-speed transmission, and it drives on the front wheel, so it's front-wheel drive, powered by a V8. And the inside is absolutely gorgeous. It's very Art Deco, beautifully repetition of clocks, equally balanced.
Yeah, it's
but there's your gearbox. There's your gearbox. So I don't want to mess around too much because the car's not running. So it's pre-select. Let's see if I can get a better. Can you see that? My fingers?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
So it's pre-select. So this works with servo, vacuum servo, and electrical selection. So you'd have the 4-speed forward and reverse. And once you pull away, you can actually just change gears and it'll automatically switch over. So you just change again, you touch the clutch and it goes into the next gear. Pre-select transmission. So it was really remarkable. Amelia Earhart had one, a very nice supercharged one. And it's just one of those really remarkable cars to come out of the United States of the 1930s.
My eye caught something.
Sorry?
My eye caught something in the background there as well. Like right in the corner there, is that the Tatra?
Oh, yeah. So the Tatra,
if I may run ahead of you, is that the car that was stated that it killed more officers in the war than they actually got killed by guns? That was considered quite a dangerous vehicle.
No, it's not a very dangerous. Actually, the Tatra is a very phenomenal car. So this Tatra is the T97. It actually goes a little bit further. There was an earlier one built. This is a 1938, but the ones built in 34 and in 32. So Tatra, okay, let me just quickly go back and give you a little bit of a background. So Tatra there were two guys that worked at Austro Daimler. So that car there, that's an Austro Daimler. So at Austro Daimler, there was a gentleman by the name of Ferdinand Porsche, and there was a guy by the name of Hans Ledwenke. And Hans Ledwenke was playing around with rear-engined, air-cooled flat fours in that design. Okay. Porsche
almost looks like a 911.
It almost looks like a Beetle. Anyway.
Like a Beetle, yes, exactly. The front of it is a Beetle.
So what happened was Hans Ledwenke carried on with this, and he created the Tatras. And he was famous for putting that very nice air-cooled V8 in the back of a Tatra. It was a phenomenal car. And I think that's the car that you're thinking of, the V8-powered one that was so dangerous. Because it was very quick, and they did like that car during the Second World War. This one's a little bit before the war, and it's not as powerful as the V8. But Hans Ledwenke's idea was stolen, and I just can't think where I read it now. But there's an article out there where they actually say that after the Second World War, Germany and Volkswagen actually had to pay Tatra compensation for infringement of copyright of these Tatras for the building of the Beetle. So it's quite a phenomenal story. And very few people actually know that. But so this is a Tatra, air-cooled, 4-cylinder, horizontally opposed, rear-engine car that looks like that. And I always dare the people to answer the question, so who was first, Porsche or Hans Ledwenke?
Are you going to supply the answer as well?
Well, I mean, I always say, look, the Porsche designed Beetle had so many differences, and I've got to play both sides of the fence here. But he was really under pressure to supply a car to that gentleman that walked funny with a little black moustache on his top lip, because that's what he needed. He needed a Volkswagen quickly, and Adolf Hitler did put pressure on Porsche to provide one, because very few people actually know that Ford presented a car to Germany as well, known as the Ford Volkswagen. It was a very small copy of, I also say it's like a cross between a Model A and a Prefect. And that's it. So there is, if you go online, you can actually Google it, the Ford VW or Volkswagen Ford presented to Adolf Hitler.
Interesting. Well, we already gone to 40 minutes and we've only touched on a little bit in one of these magnificent horses.
Yeah.
Are you going to head off to another one, or are we going to carry on?
I think if you guys, I'm going to have to walk outside now and it's dark. So I don't think you're going to see much. I think if you guys can, I don't know, Patrick, if you can quickly sing something to the guests, and then I'll meet you in the next building.
We'll drool over what we just saw for a while now.
Okay, all right. I'm
Are
walking
you going to the building with the Ferrari?
Eventually.
There's no Ferraris today. They're in the storeroom, but I'll show you some other stuff.
Yeah. Patrick.
I'm listening, Clint.
Yeah, as long as we stay away from the Alphas.
No. You can't say that to the man. I've already got a tough time getting him to...
I'd quite happily walk away from the Alphas. Between Patrick and Lorenzo, they can talk Alpha all day.
Absolutely. So we got to keep you honest here somewhere along the line. Now, Wayne is also quite a keen motorcyclist, and if you look at the photographs in your collage there, the older the better. And I've always wanted to ask Wayne why the love for motorcycles, because he's surrounded by all these exotics, and if you see the man, he's always on a very old motorbike. That's where he's happiest.
Patrick, it's a I don't know. I grew up in a home where, look, my dad, my dad was a Ford man his whole life long. You know, I think my dad basically broke away from Fords when I was already in high school, and he then joined the Germans and went to a Mercedes-Benz, and has never looked back. But besides that, there was always a motorcycle in our yard. I don't know how it happened, but there was always one. And I think from the minute I saw one, yeah, I wanted it. And you know, it's like you know, it's like what I mean. You can't explain it. It's just something that's fascinated me my whole life. And you know, it's, if I could have a choice between the greatest, best car and a motorcycle, I'll take a motorcycle any day. Just the way I am. Well, anyway, let's forget about Wayne and let me show you. So we are now in Packard. This is the Packard Hall, Mercedes-Benz, and then for all our Italian friends, Alfa Romeo.
So, why are you skipping that so quickly?
Alfa Romeo. Okay.
That's the most important part you've got in this.
Okay, so let me just quickly, I'm going to try and walk down this side. So I'm going to walk very, very quickly and just give you a basic. So Packard, what people don't realize about Packard is arguably one of the finest cars to be built in America from about the mid-1920s till just after the 1940s. And what sets Packard apart is people don't realize this. Packard built they were the very first people to put a V12 into a motor car. So much so that they say it influenced Enzo Ferrari's choice of putting V12s into motor cars. The other thing which is also interesting is they were the first people ever to try vibration-free motoring. So in other words, mounting the engines on dampers. They were the first people to try tubeless tire technology. They were the first people on the market to use the H pattern in a transmission. So the normal, like we know, 1, 2, 3, 4 in an H. They were the first people to have automatic spark advance. Packard was so good at building motor cars that during the Second World War, when Rolls-Royce needed engines for the Spitfire fighters, they approached Packard to build the Merlin engines in the United States for them. So it's hard to believe that a company that was so good didn't make it past the end of the 1950s. Well, actually, they made it early into the end of the 1950s, but they were absolved by Studebaker, and Studebaker collapsed in '69. So, yeah, it's sad to think of it, but it's, you know, they are just phenomenal cars. They were very elegant, very stylish, and, you know, they had a very simple sales slogan: ask a man who owns one. And, yeah, that's the Packards.
Why?
So, yeah.
I'm going to stop you there. Give us your opinion as to why. How can a car that sounds so great not succeed? How can a manufacturer like that go to ruin?
Okay, so two things. A lack of adjusting what you're doing at the right time in the markets. So your product doesn't keep up with what your competition's doing. The other thing as well is, remember, spoiled for choice, cost. It's pretty much what happens, for example, you know, in today's society. You go out there and you look at your personal love, Alfa Romeo. I mean, they pretty much have lost ownership of their own company, and they're now absolved by the Fiat Group. They don't have a footprint like they used to have in the 19. I mean, you think of Alfa Romeo in South Africa, 1970s. I mean, it was one of the biggest brands around. I mean, they had their own production plant here. They made. I mean, South Africa had the second most Alfa Romeos in the world outside of Italy on the roads. But they didn't keep up with it. Bad investor choices, apartheid, so many different things led to companies not make it. And I think that's what happened with Packard. That's what happened with Studebaker. You know, companies like Ford, Chevrolet, and General Motors just outperformed them, and they couldn't keep up.
Oh, you've got some beauties in the background there now. So you please carry on.
So I'm going to quickly move on. So this is the Mercedes-Benz. So the one in the back there, that's a W21, 1934. So this one here is a 1935 130H. Now this was Ferdinand Porsche's rear-engined, water-cooled Mercedes-Benz. 1935. See where I'm getting at? There was a bit of a...
Absolutely.
Yeah. Arguably one of the greatest cars to be built by Nazi Germany and Mercedes-Benz, the 540k Mercedes-Benz, 5.4 liter, straight 8, supercharged on demand, by the way, not supercharged all the time. So this you could decide if you wanted to supercharge the car, you could actually put your foot down hard, would engage a clutch and kick in the supercharger and bring in the boost. And that would take this car from roughly, I'd say, about 115 brake horsepower to 180 brake horsepower just by accelerating hard. And they've got that characteristic high pitch whine when they're on the supercharge. And that's a Cabriolet B. Then we have the Cabriolet A. Now, interesting thing about this is the last car we had here built before the war. But after the war, most Mercedes-Benzes looked identical to this because they didn't really have the advance on technology. Remember, they had to rebuild the whole of Germany. But the strange thing is, it didn't take them long. And by 1952, if you think about it, this was less than, 7 years after the war had ended. We were faced with this. Goldwing had been built by this time. This is the Adenauer of 1952. Yeah. So that's Mercedes-Benz for you. That's just, and the German workforce. I mean, they just were phenomenal, and how quickly they got back on their feet. Right, then we're walking into your line, Patrick. What I love about Alfa Romeo, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to stand here, I'm going to try and see if I can show you something here. So Alfa Romeo, what I like about it is not only do they make cars that handle really well, but there's a design philosophy around it. So they don't just build cars. And I mean, we're talking here a concept that's gone with them most of their life. So this is Alfa Romeo over here. This is a 6C Frecciadora, which basically is Italian for golden arrow. And this was designed in-house. And the carrozzeria on this thing is actually, Alfa Romeo was so proud of what they did. They actually, I'm going to see if I can't get this on the screen here. So that, oops, wrong way. Everything's backwards. That says Carrozzeria Alfa Romeo. Okay, so that's their own interior or their own design, in-house designers. But then you come to this little car here. That is an Alfa Romeo Sprint Veloce Confortavale, and that is designed by Bartone. You move on, and the next car over here is an Alfa Romeo. This is a 2-liter Spider, 1960, and that is designed by Touring. And again, you know, the names are on the car. So I don't know if you can see that on the bonnet there. There's the emblem. On the side of the car there, you can see Bartone. And you walk across, and then you move to the next car. Here we have a little Giulietta Spider, beg your pardon. Designed by Pininfarina. This needs no introduction, right? Alfa GTV 1750. Okay, so this is designed by Giugiaro while he was at Bartone, right? You walk across here. Here we have the most memorable of Alfa Romeos. This is the Alfa Romeo Montreal, designed by Bartone, V8 powered. This engine actually was a similar motor to what they used in that very famous T33 race car. So that's 2.6 mechanical fuel injection. Right. Patrick, you want to talk about this car? You know this car.
Mr. Damso's 3-liter GTV.
That's it. That's Serge Damso's 3-liter GTV. We're fortunate to own it. I always get moaned at when Serge sees the car. I want to know why the kilometers are so high. But yeah, lovely, lovely car. A car born out of South Africa's
It's
racing.
unique.
Yeah, it's very unique. We've lost a lot of them to Europe because people realize it's a homologated car that can go race in Europe. So that one over there is a 3-liter car built or modified by Sampie Bosman up in Johannesburg. They took 2.5 motor, uprated to 3-liter, chucked the fuel injection off, put carburetors on, fiberglass the nose, homologated 500 of them, and then took the fight to BMW and actually kicked butt. Right, and then the last two. And then the last
Beautiful
two.
era.
It's a fantastic era in motorsport. Then here we have the last two, the two Zagatos. So these are, and that, by the way, is a Giugiaro design car. So we have the two Zagato design cars. This was Bianco's car from Alfa Romeo's days. And he ordered all of the rest of the world, all have red with cream interiors or brown interiors. But he ordered his factory delivered with black interior, which is rather interesting. And then the RS, the RZ, beg your pardon, Zagato. And this is the only one to come to South Africa. That's everyone remembers the one that was in the car magazine. That's the car. And these are all powered by beautiful sounding, absolutely gorgeous sounding 3-liter V6 double overhead cam cars. They're just phenomenal motor cars.
I've got it on record now that you made that statement to the public now that these are
no.
motor
Look,
cars.
I mean, let me just put it this way. Let me put it this way. They are made. They are composite cars. The yellow one, for example, was built in Zagato's factory because there were so limited numbers on these made. And I'm going to have to just check my fact here. I can't remember if it's how many there were. No, so there were 278 built of the yellow ones. And this one, the build plate inside this car, this is number 170 of all of them made. So they are really, really rare. I want to see if I can't get this thing to, I beg your pardon, 140. Okay, I don't know if you can see the plate in the middle.
Yep.
Okay. So it's a very, very beautifully designed car. A lot of thoughts gone into it. It's a composite car based on the Alpha 75 running gear. So everyone you bought, for example, of the RZs, was in fact a concept car. It was never a car that really went into major production. If you think about it, everyone goes bananas about the fact that Ferrari only built 275 288 GTOs. And here you're sitting with 278 RZs. It's about as rare as a 288 GTO Ferrari.
Well, it's good to hear that you've got some respect for these old Alfa Romeos. I feel a lot better about it now. When you're in this game that I've been in, Patrick, it's hard not to admit or to you've got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, every country, every nation has at some point in time built proper stuff. Absolutely.
And and people say, yeah, you can't really say that. But I mean, you talk about the Czechs with Tatra. I mean, I personally have owned a Lada, a Russian-built Lada. It's one of the cars I fell in love with. It had terrible finishes, but the little thing was phenomenal. It would climb anywhere, it would go anywhere. You could fix it with whatever you wanted to. And, it never really let me down. And I really enjoyed my little Lada Niva. Then I've had a Mercedes-Benz that I despise. It's one of the worst cars I've ever driven. And yet people around the world still swear Mercedes-Benzes are the best things. But I mean, I've had a good Mercedes-Benz as well. I've had a good Volkswagen. I've had a great Fiat.
That's very, very true what you're saying. You cannot criticize and be negative about any manufacturer. Because somewhere in that manufacturer's list of motor cars, you're going to find one that really turns you on. And
Yeah.
I think that's what makes motoring so interesting, because you can spend a year at the museum and you'll change your mind on a daily basis as to which one's your favorite inside there.
Yeah, and it's strange. 20 years ago, I was in love with flat, sharp cars. That's all I wanted to own, was a flat, sharp car. And I think as I've matured now, I've kind of moved away from that. And I've started experiencing, enjoying. Sorry?
Wayne, you also had an affinity for cars with scorpions on them.
Yeah, but I mean, again, you give me one of these modern rebranded Abarths and I want to throw up. I mean, it's just an absolute badge engineering. There is really nothing quirky or Abarthy about any of this new rubbish that the Fiat Group's bringing out. And I'd say it quite straightforward. I mean, I've driven most of them, and other than the little, I think it was the Fiat Punto, the Abarth Punto Abarth that they brought out a couple of years ago, which was really good. The new Spider is a joke. I don't really enjoy it. I do not enjoy any of the little 500 Abarths. The Biposto is maybe the one that I would drive. It's really quick, but there's just nothing quirky. It doesn't come anything close to the double bubble Zagatos of the 1750s, the 131 Miata Fioris, the 850 Tourer Corsas, the 1000 TCRs. They were just giant killers, and they punched above their weight, and they were just quirky. Ran with the boot open, whining gearboxes. Yeah, I mean,
character.
It's like a Renault. I mean, this Renault's boring, but give me a 110 Alpine, please, here any day. Yeah, it's just great cars. A little Turbo 5, great car. And then Gordinis. Jeez, what an amazing car.
I must interrupt you quickly. We've got a few people coming on screen here. Ernie Pagel, it is once again a brilliant show, guys. I must also admit that Ernie's about 80 years old, so he'll enjoy these cars. Divan Safar Swart, beautiful 1900s. This was the safari vehicle, cruiser of note. Abdul's come up and said, brilliant, guys. So, yeah, it's easy to say we got all motor racing crazy, but the history of transport, the heritage of transport, you wouldn't have motor racing if we didn't have general transport. And it would be fair to say that once the second car was built, it became competition.
Yeah, I mean, everyone says, when did the first motor race take place? I said, the day they built the second car. Yeah, I mean, it's the character of the human being. It's the character of men. They gave them horses and they had a race. They gave them, bicycles. They had a race. Give them a motor car, they're going to have a race. I take you a bit, Patrick. The day you move into the old age home and you get in your wheelchair, you're going to look for a dice with the guy next to you.
Only if it's got an Alpha badge on
it. So now, okay, so yeah, this is some of the quirky stuff. So here we are now in what I call the display, where we've got a few themes. So this one is our station wagons. So you'll see there's an old 1915 Model T station wagon. There's a DeSoto Suburban. And then we have a Ford Country station wagon. Yeah. There's a name that I think a lot of people have forgotten. Borgward Isabella Combi.
Indestructible motor.
Yeah, and then obviously a little bit more modern, Mercedes-Benz 230 TE. Just on a note, that Borgward Isabella Combi is unrestored from the day they found it. This was a company owned by the Rupert family by their associate called Braganza Tea. And it was, vir die Afrikaanse mense, dit was 'n maatskappy genoemd Nasionale Thee en Koffie. And to give an idea how forward-thinking the family and the company was, this was the first company in Southern Africa to be solely operated and managed by women. And that's why this car is in the museum. So it's got a great South African history as well. Right, and then on the other side of the museum over here is obviously our four-wheel drives. So these are all cars with four-wheel drive, obviously starting with the most memorable little Jeep. This is a CJ2A, which was a civilian Jeep. This is not a military one, although it's painted military colors. This is a DKW Munga from the 1950s. Two-stroke, three-cylinder, 1,000cc DKW motor or auto unit engine. Four-wheel drive, one engine. Right, then this beautiful old Jeep Wagoneer. Now, this car, I got a call from a gentleman in Pretoria who had this thing standing in his store. And he said to me, if I can get it going, I can come fetch and drive it away. And he gave it to the museum. I flew up. The thing had been standing for many years. Took me 2 afternoons in his garage. I got it started. I drove it. I drove it about 60 kilometers from his home in Pretoria to where I could get it loaded onto a truck. And as I was loading the truck, it broke down. But it was amazing. After standing all those years, it started, drove all the way there, and now we have it running, unrestored. Very original car. Right, then we have the Citroen Mahari. Now these are, a lot of people confuse them with the Citroen Safari, which was a Deschevaux or a 2CV with the engine in the front and the back. This is a Mahari, which is based on a 2CV. It's a little bit of a space frame chassis, but the whole body, this whole body, yeah, is made of plastic. It's a Lexan body car, very light, very capable. And if you go back and you read the Paris-Dakar history, the first Paris-Dakars, the medical aid cars or the support cars were Citroen's Maharis. Right, and then we have this absolute humongous monster. So that's a Toyota Mega Cruiser. This is a total import from Japan. They were never sold here, but they are phenomenal. One of the best four-wheel drive vehicles I've ever seen and driven in. I mean, it blows away the American Hummer or Humvee. Four-wheel steering, so it basically can turn on a ticky. Four-wheel drive, remarkable transmission. And the engine in front is exactly the same as the Toyota Dynas. So it's got a 4.1 liter, 4-cylinder diesel from a Toyota Dyna. So we service this car, parts and stuff all comes from Toyota down the road. What makes this vehicle fantastic is its transmission is just phenomenal. Right, and then very quickly, we are now going to walk through, we have a wide selection of pickups or bakkies. That was the Ford's very first bespoke, designed and built pickup, the Ford Model A, and was the first bakkie that you could buy off the shelf with a purpose-built load bin. It wasn't something that was rebuilt afterwards. And then everyone followed suit. So you find Ford with the 34 pickup, then you have obviously International. One of the prettiest pickups ever made is the Willys. I mean, they just got great lines. Studebaker 1961. Japanese pickups arrived in the country in the early 60s. So this is a 1963 Jupiter Junior. Everyone remembers the Toyopet, and then obviously the Nissan Junior. Then a rare monster. This is really rare. So this is, let me just get it from the side here, because that always blows people. So that is a Ford Mustang. And no, it wasn't cut in someone's backyard. That car is known as the Ford Mustero. 50 were made in the world. And they were produced by a company called Beverly Hills Mustang, all on the west coast of America. So if you look at these cars' engine numbers, they are all west coast engine numbers. Okay? They're all left with 289s, and they were all stock standard coupes, not fastbacks, coupes. Beverly Hills Mustang cut them back and turned them into pickups, because in 65 Mustang had some of the best sales in America, and they thought by building this pickup, they were going to capture the pickup market with the Mustang. But again, like we spoke earlier, market research was not done properly, and America does not like small pickups. So the project was stopped just after 50 had been built, and this one came to South Africa via the United Kingdom. So it's a very rare piece, this. Unfortunately, the previous owner, who we bought it from, thought it good to try and make a Shelby of it. So it's not a proper Shelby. This is a copy Shelby. But originally, they were sold with steel wheels, hubcaps, and a 289, just like a farmer's truck. Right, then, here's a piece of South African history. This is known as the Chevrolet Brute. Okay? And it's a play on the word of the Ute, the Australian Lumina Ute. So this is basically the little Chevy or the old Opel Corsa. It's now got a turbocharged motor in, 147 kilowatts, 1.8 liter. All the body panels were all done for presentation to General Motors South Africa, and they were going to build this car to replace when they took the Lumina away or stopped production of the Lumina. They were going to produce this in its place, but the project was put forward a couple of months before, or I think a year before, General Motors in South Africa decided to withdraw, and so it was never really done. And they contacted the museum and said, listen, if we're not going to take it, they're going to destroy the car because it's got no papers and it's not allowed to be registered on the road. So yeah, this was one of the last creations to come out of General Motors South Africa, and I doubt we'll see them back here. It's rather sad.
Indeed.
Okay.
But it's great to see these one-of-a-kinds find their way to the museum, because to lose them would also be a disaster.
Yeah, and Patrick, again, like with everything, it just shows it's the can-do South African attitude. We lost when Australia stopped sending us the Lumina SS or the Ute pickup. We decided, well, we're not going to leave it there. We're going to take it further. We're going to try and develop the product. But little did we know that that was the end of General Motors in South Africa. But
well,
yeah,
we've seen a few cars arrive, like the one that's in the background. You can't see it now, I presume, in bits and pieces. How do people go about looking for a unique vehicle of this nature? In other words, you could walk onto any farm somewhere and you're going to see a lot of wreckage lying there. But what makes a car unique? What makes a car collectible?
So, okay, for us, what's happened, it's not about numbers, it's not about value, it's about the history. That's become very, very important to. So, for example, that Rolls Royce, the last car we've ever really bought in a long time, the car that was owned by Sir Pierre von Reineveld, who started the South African Air Force. That makes cars, collectible for us, is the fact that it's got to have, if it's got South African heritage, and it's got great heritage, and it's affected the country, I beg your pardon, in the way it was, that's great. I mean, we've got Nelson Mandela's, BMW that he used in the 46664 campaign. We have Dr. Rupert's father's first car, which is Dr. John Rupert. His second car. His first car was a Model T, but his second car, a Chevy. And then we've got cars, like the Ford A that I showed you at the beginning, which are important. And then, obviously, we try and have cars which, like the GSM Dart, the Flamingo, the Capri Piranha, the Alfa GTV. We've got a Chevy 4100 Golden Anniversary when Chev turned 50 in South Africa. And then we've got, these cars behind me here, which are remarkable cars in the fact that, if it wasn't for the involvement of the then Rembrandt Tabak company, we wouldn't have them, because they sponsored a lot of racing in South Africa. And I mean, what very few people actually know is that Team Gunston is the oldest branded racing team in the world. It was first seen on I think it was the 1st of December 1967 at the Bulawayo Grand Prix. Sam Tingle and John Love were basically inaugurated into Team Gunston as the first team. And that car there is the only car that I really put my hand up for, that I drive at this museum in terms of no one else. I grew up with that car pinned up against my wall. It was on the back of all the magazines, car magazines. Dare I say it, on the back of Scope. I grew up idolizing that Team Gunston. I knew the driver. I know the drivers. I've met. I'm happy to say I've met John Love. I actually met him the year he passed away. He signed the airbox of the sister car to this at Swartkorps. And then I was fortunate to meet Eddie Kaizen, Ian Schechter, some of the great drivers, Andrew Thompson, who've all driven for Team Gunston. So yeah, it's just one of those teams. The colors are just phenomenal. I mean, you can't really fault that team color. But again, this is why we collect what we do. We try and get as much of the South African heritage in here as possible. Now, I'm going to show you one motorcycle before I leave here, which is a unique South African piece as well. But yeah, so this here, let's just start right here. This is the 1972 Chevron. It's a B25 Chevron. It's powered by a 1600cc FVA on fuel injection with a Hewland 200 transmission. A phenomenally quick little car. This one was the third of the 3 chassis. There were 3 chassis bought in. We actually, South Africa, got B25-1, which was John Love's original car, which is now in pieces, but we know where most of it is. It was destroyed in a bit of a fire, but they're gonna try and rebuild it. Then there's B25-2, which was Ian Schechter's car, which is now in Australia. And then there's B25-3, which is this car, which was the spare car, which Ian Schechter raced once, John Love raced it once. I'm trying to think, it's Kromfoss raced it, Thompson raced it. I'm trying to think who else raced it. But yeah, so it was the spare car. This car was then taken apart and was a dummy car for many years, and then we then rebuilt it in 2007 to its condition it is now. And we are the only people actually running a B25 in period still with an FVA. Most people have switched to BDAs because they did convert to BDA later on. This car is the very famous Schechter 1974 Tyrrell 007-1, and this was the car that if I speak under correction, Patrick, that he won his maiden Grand Prix in for Tyrrell, and I think it was it the Swiss Grand Prix?
Sweden.
Not Sweden. Yeah. Swedish Grand Prix, yeah. So again, a lovely motor car. And this car had a great turn of history as well, because on the wall behind it up there, you can see it in Lexington colors. So this car, after it had raced with Tyrrell, it was sold to Team Lexington, and Ian raced it. And it raced 2 years afterwards against the later car in the South African Grand Prix. And that was the last time it ever raced, in 1976. It got damaged in a race there. I think Ian went off with it. It got damaged, and it stood for many years afterwards, and we've actually restored it now, but we decided to put it back into its original form let me just get around that thing there, in its original form in the Tyrrell colors as Jody raced it. The other thing that's interesting as well is that this car, when we read it, it's got a proper DFV in, it's got a Hewland 400 transmission, and the motor, when we sent the engine to Cosworth to be rebuilt, from the numbers, it was actually an ex-McLaren works engine that was supplied in period to McLaren. But these motors all got, remember it raced in 76, so they got a 74 motor from McLaren for this car in 76. Right, this car over here is a March 78. This is a B78. This is a Formula Atlantic. This is 1600cc BDA. This is a quick little machine. This thing is really, really fast. On carburetors, but this car here is Ian Schechter's 1978 championship car. So he won the 1978 Formula Atlantic Championship in this car. Hence it's allowed to carry the number 1. And it's a fantastic, fantastic little car. I mean, the design on this is just remarkable. I mean, the upright windscreen.
We've lost you for a moment there, Wayne.
Now I've got a phone call coming in.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Right, and then
Sam Tingle.
yeah, Sam Tingle's LDS Climax. So this is the Formula One Climax, which raced the famous one where they always said love first, Tingle second. This car is, as far as we're aware, the last chassis to be built by LDS. It was powered initially by the engine that's in it now, which is a Coventry Climax 2.7 liter Formula One motor. This is exceptionally quick. It's got no wings, so in a straight line it just flies. Doesn't go around corners as quick as a wing car, but lots and lots of power. But what happened was, people don't realize this car was actually one of the first Gunston cars. So in period, it was painted from this original livery to the Gunston livery in 67, and was fitted with, see the motor at the back there? So that is the 3-liter Repco engine that was fitted to that car. And believe it or not, it actually destroyed the car. It made it worse. It was slower with the Repco engine than what it was with the Coventry Climax motor. The car was never built for a motor of that size. And Sam Tingle actually went from this to the Brabham BT11, which is now his car in the UK, which is the ex-Denny Hume car. So that's why he went from this car to the Brabham BT11. Right, then the car next to it is another. Yeah, so this is an LDS Ecos, and this again, strange enough, is got great South African history. This car is on record as being one of the few cars, if not the only car in the world, to actually have a point. Sorry.
I'm interrupting you. I'm talking with you. Sorry. Carry on.
Now, what do you want to say, Patrick?
If I'm not mistaken, that car is also the only South African sports car to ever win a world championship point.
Yeah, and believe it or not, it's also got a point in Formula One. So it's the only car in the world to actually have a point in sports cars and in Formula One.
That I
Because
didn't know.
it was actually a single-seater when it started off its life, and was rebodied later on into a sports car.
Okay.
So it's a very,
again.
yeah, that's something very interesting. Right, so this Corvette Z06, phenomenal car. This is a 7-liter V8, 377 kilowatt motor. This is got 6-speed, does 320 kilometers an hour. It's got those titanium rods. It's really a really fantastic car. Now, the sad thing about this car is whenever I look at this car, I remember Sabine Schmidt driving this car. She came to South Africa and she drove it at the Top Gear event. So it's General Motors brought 2 of these cars out, a black one and this gold one, and for R&D and development. And when they did Top Gear in 2011, Sabine raced this car, which is phenomenal.
Wayne, before you go to that, Snake, um, in the glass cabinet next to the Corvette is a very interesting steering wheel.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to touch on that topic there, please.
Okay, so again, if you look next to the steering wheel are two gauntlets or two gloves signed by John Love. And then the cars at the back are obviously cars that we would have raced. But the steering wheel comes out of that very, very famous Surtees accident that he had. At Kyalami, if I'm not mistaken.
At Clubhouse.
Yeah, where you put the car into the barrier and the barrier came through the car and almost took his head off and bent that steering wheel. And that steering wheel there is the steering wheel from the accident. And he kept that steering wheel all his life. And when his wife, Carol, and his grandson, Bart, donated us all the memorabilia from his home, that steering wheel came with.
Also, that car now, so if I may interrupt you, that Surtees also had a brilliant result at the recent historic Grand Prix at Monaco, where it actually won the race.
Yeah, it's scary to see how many of those great cars are no longer with us. I remember seeing a couple of years ago the Brabham that he raced. Also on the entry sheet for the Monaco Grand Prix, and you just see the Lotus 72 that was here in Gunston colors is also there now. So it's just sad that we've lost all those great cars to other countries, and yet they made their marks and they won some of the greatest races here.
South Africa was really a big name in motorsport for many years, and it's interesting. We were one of the only countries to have a domestic Formula One series.
Yeah, I mean, we were just a country that really, I don't know, we just punched way above our weights when it came to motorsport in so many respects. You know, Gordon Murray comes from South Africa. You know, I'm just trying to think of the great designers that went. You know, Pieter Blanche, Rory Byrne. I'm trying to think of all the names. I'm just going blank. But I mean, yeah. And you see all this. You know, this little country, the south side of the continent, and what we've achieved, and what we've presented the world, in what we can do. I mean, it's sad that we just don't have the support from the big industries anymore, like we used to.
Two very phenomenal vehicles behind you now.
Yeah. So this Viper is on loan to us. This is a Gt2 Viper, but it's got GT3 history as well. This car is race ready. It's on loan to us from Harp Motorsport. And so is, by the way, the little Ecos. So this car, yeah, I don't know much about it. It's just one of those amazing motor cars that everyone remembers from period. And yeah,
Like Jarvis raced it at Kalani, and it
it's
actually
fun.
caught fire.
Well, there you go. Then the Porsche Carrera Gt needs no introduction. One of the nicer supercars we have to drive. I really enjoy it, mainly because it's still stick shift. And
nothing sounds like that car.
Yeah, and you know, it was born out of the fact that Porsche wanted to celebrate their successes, and you know, it carried a lot. And there was even talk about it going to be a car built for Le Mans. 1,225 were produced. I think Porsche always tends to build way too many of a certain amount of certain cars. And if they built that car in numbers similar to what Ferrari does, 300, I think it would be a much more prized car today than what it really is. It's actually, as far as I'm concerned, way better than any of the follow-up cars that came after it. The V10's phenomenal, manual. And you know, Patrick, next year it's 20 years old, eh?
I don't care. I just want to hear that thing all day long. It's one of the most beautiful sounds you can hope to hear in any motor car.
So there we have a 912 unrestored. That car is as it left the factory back in 1965. And we have an unrestored 930, which is pretty much ready for restoration. And if I walk across here, we have, I think, the creme de la creme of our collection, the Aston Martin Db4 Spider, one of 3 in the world. They built for the Monaco Grand Prix. Let's do one for the Monaco Grand Prix. Where am I going? I'm getting tired. It's been a long day. One was built for the Paris Motor Show. One was built for the London Motor Show, and the other one was built for the Turin Motor Show. This is the Paris Motor Show car. They are all based on Aston Martin Db4, so they're still powered by the Lagonda 2.9 motors. They are all very concept cars. They do not have great suspension geometry or ergonomics, but you can see what Aston Martin was getting at when he followed up after this with the DB3s, DB4s, and DB5s and 6s. But yeah, it's a phenomenal motor car. Very thin, Superleggera bodywork, so it's Carrozzeria Touring. It's a fantastic. I'm going to walk a bit closer to this car. You've got to experience this car.
Great to see those colours on the Grand Prix podium this weekend as well, with taking their first result of note.
Yeah. I wonder how long that's going to be before they actually can repeat it.
Well, I think they've got serious plans to start winning, so it'll be great to see these green cars achieve the success they've been longing for so many years. They are beautiful, and Aston Martin is a legendary name in motorsport, also with a South African connection. So great to have them there.
Yeah. And then obviously, what most people don't realize is that Carroll Shelby pedaled one at Le Mans as well.
Yep.
He raced for Aston Martin.
Yep.
So right, there we have the follow-up, which definitely. So that is the Aston Martin Db4 GT. Let me see if I can get a better picture of it for you. This is not the car that everyone associates James Bond with. This is a unique car. There's only 57 in the world, 39 right-hand drives. But this is one of the first cars to be fitted with that very nice 302 brake horsepower Vantage motor. That awesome, 3.7 liter straight six on triple Webers. And I mean, this thing just sounds phenomenal. You talk about a car that sounds great. This is just British straight six at its best. It's just a really lovely sounding motor car. And it goes really well. I've been fortunate to drive some really cool cars in my life, including a short wheelbase Ferrari from the 1960s. And I must honestly say that this car is as good, if not better, than. What's going on there? This thing's playing somersaults here. A lovely, lovely motor car.
Well, if you compare the era and you compare the Aston Martin to the Ferraris of the same era, it was a unique time in motoring, because those cars are simply, I don't know, they never get old. They will always remain classic. They will always remain popular.
Yeah, and I think this is what we will never experience again. I think with automated design, with rapid project, I mean, something's got lost. You know, I've sat in some really nice motor cars of late, and you know, even the big names, you know, the really big names, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, you know, with their hand-turned aluminium bits and stuff. It's there, but I don't know, that panache is gone. That
uniqueness,
soul.
the individuality, the
soul,
you
the soul's gone. Yeah, the soul is gone. I mean, you know, you get into the thing that freaks me out the most, and I'm being very honest here, and I'm going to get roasted for this. The thing that freaks me out the most about all the modern cars is the false exhaust notes that get built into the cars with these tuned exhausts that they build the exhaust to make that noise. Now, that Aston Martin has got a distinct noise that comes from it, and it can only be made by an Aston Martin. If you change the pipe, you know, and you put it's going to sound very similar or just deeper, but it's an Aston Martin. The same with that Healy. That Healy's got a distinct note. Your Alfa Romeos you spoke about earlier has got a distinct note. A highly tuned Kent 1600 Ford sounds like a highly tuned Kent 1600 Ford. I had a meeting today with two very, very famous people, and Mike Monk was one of them. And they were talking about going to watch rallies when Surge was rallying, of all places. They said they could stand on a corner and not see a car coming and know exactly who was coming by the engine note that was coming down the road. We've lost that. You know,
it was even present as recently as the Group 1 era, where you could listen to a 3-liter GTV, and you could even differentiate between Nico Bianco, Abel D'Oliveira, or whoever was driving it at the time, and the BMWs and the Ford V8s. They all had unique sounds and looks about them.
Exactly. And now today you go and buy a car and they've got a 4-cylinder Fiat Abarth with twin exhausts on and a tuned note coming out the back. I mean, hell's bells, guys. You climb into an i8 and they've got a recording of an engine noise. You know, I mean, really?
We don't fit into this electronic era.
The soul has been lost. I mean, people spend fortunes on Swiss-made watches because of the feel, the sensation, and the quality they're holding. Okay, and we've lost that with the motor cars. You know, you want to get into a Bentley from the 1950s, 40s, 50s, and it feels like a Swiss watch on your arm, not like a plastic over-the-counter thing. It's disposable. But then you get into one of these modern cars, and there's no difference between a top-end Toyota and a top-end Mercedes, because they're all copying each other. They all got the big plastic screen in the middle, and they all got that leather smell, and they've all got, you know, whatever, bells and whistles. It's just soulless. I really, nothing out there has captured my imagination like a car from, I would say the last cars that captured my imagination must have been in the 70s. You know, even the 80s stuff didn't really capture my imagination. And it's sad because these are rolling sculptures. There's a quality and a feel to them that it's just different. And I hope someone does achieve that soon, because guys, I think Gordon Murray's latest car, what's the T50, if I'm not mistaken, he's gone out and he's built a car purposely to do that. It's a driver's car. The feeling, the sensation is all about that. And, you know, we need more Gordon Murrays doing that, building cars that have soul. And we're losing it. We're losing it very fast. Yes, they're building great, fast, reliable cars that are safer than anything else that's been on the road. But I think for us true petrol heads, someone somewhere, if they come up with the right formula, they're going to coin it. So quickly, behind us here, we have the Mazda Nsx.
Honda Nsx.
Yeah, a fantastic motor car. Again, actually too well built. It does everything well. Ayrton Senna was involved with this. Super reliable. You can use it as a daily driver. And yeah, this unfortunately is the automatic one. But a car that's also timeless. But I think, again, been spoiled by the fact that they just built way too many of them. Way too many. I mean, Honda then sold it to Curator, and they carried on building it. And they've just released the latest one. And yeah, I just think, again, limited numbers might have made it a much more desirable car than it is today.
Like that one.
Mazda Cosmo, a very rare beast. This is a Series 2. This is a 1968 car. Initially had 10A in. Most of the 10As were aluminium housing motors, but they didn't last long, so a lot of them have been replaced with 12As. Jay Leno's one's already got a 12A in as well. Only two, I believe, came to South Africa. The other one, a red one, sometimes pops up at shows in Cape Town. And this is a phenomenal car. I've known about this car for many years. It used to be owned by a gentleman that lived around the corner from the Heidelberg Transport Museum. And when he needed to sell the car, he contacted us. And fortunately for us, Mr. Rupert liked it very, very much and asked me to go and buy it. Also, the Japanese were the people that, how can I put it, got the rotary, old Cole Wankel's rotary motor and got it working properly. That is the South African built one-off Peugeot Hill Climb Special built by Don Tout. Now, Don Tout was a guy from Krugersdorp and Joburg Krugersdorp area, and wanted a sports car to ride around and racing, and decided to build his own car. He used the original Peugeot 402 chassis and engine because of the interesting pre-select transmission, and I think we're going to have a closer look at this one as well, because the transmission in this car was really, really good. It was a Kotal box. A lot of people use Kotal gearboxes in race cars. So I'm going to try and get my hand in here. Okay. All right, so that's what the dash looks like. And then right down here. Now remember the Cord had this on the dashboard? Can you see that? So that's your gearbox. So Cord had this on the dashboard. So what he did is he actually took it from off the steering column and put it down here. And that was pre-selected. It's got forward and backwards. You can go forward, you can go in reverse in 4 gears, and you can go forward in 4 gears. They obviously modified the motor, so they changed the head, the valves, changed the stroke of the engine, put on a cabin booster from a Mosquito aircraft supercharger. It's a Roots type supercharger, and the car didn't really perform as a race car, and believe it or not, it's got papers, it's registered on the road, but never really did well as a race car. And then he entered it into a couple of hill climbs, and it did remarkably okay. Well, didn't win anything major, but and was then nicknamed the Peugeot Hill Climb Special. Later in life, the fenders were added. I'm going to show you the front fenders. These front fenders were added. They weren't on the original car, and the back of the car used to have a bolted-on fender that went across the back wheels like that, and then later the cycle fenders were added. The car was made out of a whole lot of different pieces. It had a SS100 Jaguar radiator, SS Jag100 tank, the brakes off a Dodge truck, and that was all just stuff that he'd made up in the garage. But the body is handmade, and it's a phenomenally well-built body. If you think that is all handmade.
Real artists in those days.
Yeah. again, that's an art. You know, there's a couple of guys in South Africa still doing good work. I think of Barry Ashmole, and Piero up in Joburg. They are making some really nice bodies, but you know, Keith Agnew down here. But again, you know, where are the youngsters that are going to come along and take that over from those gentlemen? Right, and then the last two cars are our specials. This is a Ford Model T special. So that car didn't leave the factory, like it's all hand built, and it was all built to go quickly, all modified, actually very, very fast. It's a 6-speed Ford Model T from 1916.
How fast is fast?
So if you take it, remember, we're talking here 1916.
Yep.
We're talking speeds of between 80 and 100 kilometers an hour.
That is fast.
Yeah, and remember, guys, when they were racing these things, they were not racing on tar. They were racing on dirt tracks. Unless you were living in the UK and you were racing at Brooklands, you were pedaling these things around on dirt or down a deserted beach, that type of thing. And then this here is a very modern recreation of what they were doing in the early years. So this is built by a very good friend of mine and absolutely awesome engineer from Hard Bay by the name of Richard Daggett. Dickon's been around in car game for years. And he bought that V8 Clinton motor. No. Is it a Clinton motor? Sorry, I'm speaking under correction here. I've actually painted myself into a corner here. So it's a First World War Curtis, I remember.
Curtis, yeah.
First World War Curtis aircraft engine, and they were used in training planes. So what Dickon did is, he heard about this engine and he bought it. He's going to build himself an aircraft special. Found this chassis somewhere in South Africa. I don't even think he knows what chassis is from. That bonnet he made himself in his workshop. Okay, so if you look at that, it's all exposed valve gear, gorgeous, individual sleeves. I mean, this is really remarkable stuff. Right, then he's got it on a Rolls-Royce transmission, but because he needed to get the engine to turn in the opposite direction, he has to go through this reduction gearbox, change the direction onto his differential at the back. And that's where guys like Dick can just come to the fore. Because he figures this all out and he gets it all to work. It's just phenomenal stuff. I mean, everything in this car, even the dashboard, is all his creation.
His Lagonda was that beautiful as well.
Yeah, he had that beautiful 39 Lagonda, that one that raced at Le Mans Gonda. That's a beautiful motor car. Yeah, that's also unfortunately left our shores.
Wayne,
Okay, and
we can keep you busy all night, but I think you've had enough of us now for a while.
So I can't let you go without talking about one motorcycle. So give me 2 more minutes of your time.
It has to be a Ducati then.
No, it's going to be even better than a Ducati. So I'm going to show you the motorcycle that won the 1936 DJ. Now remember, 1936 was the last DJ ever to happen because there were so many accidents, people died. You know that the DJ is still one of the oldest motorcycle races in the world. The TT beats it by 2 years. Right, so the DJ happens in Johannesburg. It's a Durban-Joburg race. And they used to race from Durban to Johannesburg through 21 farm gates on sand roads. In 1936, a gentleman by the name of Cranley Jarman raced this 1926, okay, AJS 350, okay, and on index won the race. Jarman built this machine in his backyard. Okay, now, and what makes Jarman phenomenal is the fact that he was the tuner for the great Beppe Castellani, who was, for lack of another term, South Africa's Valentino Rossi of the 1930s. This motorcycle was 10 years old when he won the race. It was built out of bits, was his daily rider, and he raced from Durban to Johannesburg in 6 hours. Let me double check my facts quickly. 6 hours. It's not even on anymore. I'm going to lie to you. It was 6 hours and I think 15 minutes. Durban to Joburg.
Scary.
Yeah, on dirt roads through 21 farm gates. And remember, it was dirt. And his philosophy was to beat the bigger bikes and the faster bikes. He wanted something that was light and easy to handle and wasn't going to make him tired. And that's why he built this little 350. This motorcycle was lost for many years and was found by a gentleman by the name of Colin Anderton from Nigel. And it was given to a very dear friend of mine who's unfortunately not with us anymore. He died of old age, old Huey Hollard. And one of the first things I remember doing when I got to the Heidelberg Transport Museum was actually going to Huey Hollard's house and helping him get this started after he had done a lot of work on it. And that bug was bitten. So that motorcycle there has a tremendous soft spot in my life. And again, it is now, I think, one of the safest resting places in the country. I mean, it's just a phenomenal piece of South African history.
Wayne,
Right, gentlemen.
You're a walking, talking encyclopedia on transportation and racing and everything in South Africa motoring. And we truly appreciate the time and effort you put into this tonight to take us on a walkabout. We're not going to let you get away with it because we know that behind those halls is another bigger hall with more vehicles in it. And sometime or the other, you're going to change the display. And then we're going to put you through this pain again.
Yeah, so what we'll do is, I think, Patrick, what I think we must do is, and I'd like to put it to you, and maybe you can ask the guys who have tuned in, is maybe we should select 3 or 4 cars. And I'll go into them in depth, and we'll open the bonnets, boots, maybe even start them for you. And, there's so much that we've just glanced over tonight. And, this was just a walk and talk, no preparation done in this. And if I know what we're going to do, I can prep. We can then really go into in-depth. So if there's someone who wants to know about Fords, maybe we can have a Ford night. If there's someone who wants to know about the race cars, we can pull the covers off. We can show you what they look like under the skin. Maybe even start on that.
You have just created a lot of work for yourself because it's going to happen.
No, it's fine. I mean, payment can be done in small bottles of Baines whiskey and big bags of biltong, and then we'll sort this out.
Wayne, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We had a great poll tonight. The reaction from our audience is phenomenal. They enjoyed it as well. We do consider this an introduction to Franschhoek Motor Museum. We'll go into detail with these dedicated programs in the future. We just got to twist your arm a bit harder and then see how often we can have you back. But thank you very much, and we look forward to the next opportunity.
Patrick, always a pleasure chatting to you guys. And I don't know what's happened to Clint. Tell him good night, and we'll catch up again.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the viewers, how can we not appreciate what these people have done in Franschhoek Motor Museum? It's awesome to see these vehicles kept safely for the history, so much history under those roofs. Make an effort to go out there. It's well worth a visit. You don't have to be a petrol head to actually really enjoy what they've got on display there. There's so much to see, so much to learn. You will never regret going to the Franschhoek Motor Museum. Thank you for your time. Behind the scenes, Byron Height, thank you for your efforts in keeping this program on air. Clint Lingeveld, I don't know where you disappeared to, but 435 Oils, BH Media, thank you for keeping this program alive, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Drive safe.